We are going to be talking about a very cool champion that is 100% free-to-play friendly that I don't think gets enough love in the game from the content circles that I frequent at least. Before we do that though, I want to take a moment to brag. We have the Champion Chase Tournament going on for the Skill Grid Fusion, so I went ahead and actually pulled 10 Void Shards yesterday, and out of probably the 4th Void Shard, I was actually lucky enough to see this gigantic fellow pop up here. So this is Hegemon. If you're unfamiliar with Hegemon, for quite some time he was essentially the meta champion that you would want to have, especially in Classic Arena. I'm very excited to get this guy though, even though he's experienced a bit of a nerf in a couple of ways. So first of all, with how his passive works, and then also with Polymorph, of course. But he can still do a little bit of damage, and he has a very decent chance of placing the block active skills. So if I can get this guy to run in live arena, I think he can help out my team quite a bit. Very excited. Let me know if you're one of the lucky few that has Hegemon, if you run him, and where you run him. You can see people are still very high on him in the arena. The champion we are talking about today is going to be Zinogre Blademaster. This champion right here, she is actually a fantastic champion, and if you're not using her yet, I highly recommend her. And I'm going to make this video with the hope of course, helping you decide to run her. I'm going to go ahead and throw up my infographic here on screen there for you so you can see what stats we're going to try and build her with, as well as which blessings we want her in. Zinogre Blademaster, what does she bring to the table? Well, she has an A1, attacks one enemy 3 times, each hit having a 30% chance of placing a weaken for 2 turns. I don't have this champion booked, so I'm essentially going to go ahead and read it out as if it was unbooked. She gets stronger with books, of course, but we can't really say that since she's not booked. Attacks one enemy 4 times, each hit increases this champion's turn meter by 5%. Also places an increased speed on all allies for 2 turns. This is on a 4-turn cooldown, 3-turn if you have her booked, so that's a very solid skill. And the A3 attacks one enemy 4 times before attacking, places an increased attack on this champion for 2 turns. The first and second hit have a 75% chance that would book to 100 of placing a leech. And the third and the fourth have a 75, again, books to 100 chance of placing a decrease attack. You can already see some of the areas she might be useful. So she's bringing decreased attack, she's bringing a leech, she's bringing increased speed for your team, and she's bringing a A1 weaken, which has a decent land grade as well. 3 times hitter, each chance having a 30%. Passive effect increases the damage this champion deals by 1% for every 1% of HP lost. That's going to stack up to 50%. This increased damage doubles if a target is under a decreased defense debuff. Active effect prevents her death and keeps her alive on 1 HP when hit by a fatal hit. If this skill prevents this champion's death, heals them by 50% of their max HP, and will not prevent her death if she is under a heal reduction debuff. This is a very, very interesting champion. We're not done quite yet though. She also has an aura, which is incredibly useful, which is a whopping 30% speed aura in dungeons. This champion is absolutely insane. If you know a little bit about the game and the bosses and where you can use her, it's already becoming apparent she's going to be an absolute beast for Fire Knight. Fire Knight Hard and Fire Knight Normal are both significantly helped by having a Zinogre Blademaster on your team. If we go ahead and take a look at her faction as well, you'll notice she is actually a Shadowkin. Why is that important? One of the most popular champions to run on Fire Knight Hard is going to be Lady Mikage. You can flip her over to her alternative form for crowd control on the waves. That's what I do at least. And in her her Form 1, F1, A1 has an ally attack with an increased attack and increased crit damage, but more importantly, her A1 will team up with a random ally from the Shadowkin faction. The ally joining will use their default skill. So if you only have Zinogre on your team, you're basically guaranteeing that she's going to come in, she's going to get an extra 3 hits guaranteed, and she's also going to have a better chance of placing that weaken from her A1, of course. This champion was a fusion that at the time, not too many people were very high on her, in my opinion. They were kind of like, oh, she's just another damage dealer. But I did definitely see some potential there, so I went for the fusion, of course. I think she looks absolutely badass as well. And let me tell you, I do not regret fusing her, and I certainly do not regret building her, especially considering that I got away with investing 0 books. What do we have for gear? Well, these are the stats that we're running, and more specifically, this is the Fire Knight's Castle stats that we have going. She has 44,000 HP, 5,000, almost 5,100 attack, which you want her built with attack. She is a damage dealer after all. She has 311 speed, so she is a very speedy champion. I want her to go essentially second on my rotations. She has 284 accuracy to land her debuffs, and then 207 resistance. We're not really resisting anything, we're basically just focusing on speed, and we're focusing on attack, crit rate, crit damage, kind of as you can see from the infographic that I shared there on the screen earlier. And of course, if you just run her without bonuses, this is her stats as well. So still very, very speedy. Of course, 291 on the speed. If you look at the gear here, you can see that she does actually have some of the best speed gear on my account on her. And that is done on purpose because she is a crucial component to my Fire Knight Hard team, which I will show you here in just one moment. I also forgot to show you her the masteries here. Of course, if you aren't worried about progressing Fire Knight Hard, she is still a significantly beneficial champion inside the faction wars. She could see some niche use in the arena, but that's not really what she's for. You'll also get quite a bit of use out of her in the city of Centranos. I know because I use her there quite a bit even still myself. We have the gear presets that come in, and I've noticed that some of my lower tier champions, I definitely start shuffling the gear around a little bit, but Zinogre Blademaster always has her gear set on her, which should speak to essentially how often I'm using her. Over here on the left hand side, well, I'll go this way, it's probably easier. We are coming down to Giant Slayer. Giant Slayer is the mastery that I would recommend everybody grabs on her. If you're not doing Giant Slayer for some freakishly weird reason, you could come down to Eagle Eye. And you could also, of course, get Lore of Steel to help any sort of speed boosting capabilities that you have from your gear. So if you're running her with a speed set, perception set, those sorts of things. I do have her built out in counterattack masteries as well, since she can do very decent damage on the A1. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hop over into Fire Knight Hard, and I'm going to show you the particular team that you use. I did actually make a video about this team, but it has been very slightly changed. So essentially, instead of running a Yakarl the Scourge, I was actually lucky enough to pull myself a Newt now, so I can go ahead and run a Newt in that slot instead. My particular Newt is not fully booked though, of course, so I do need to get a couple more legendary books into him. But he is still a very, very strong champion, and he helps to hold this team together as well. We, of course, have Zinogre Blademaster coming in for her speed aura, first and foremost. That's going to help everybody else go significantly faster. If we have a 30% aura, and the champion has 100 base speed, that's going to give us a flat-out 30 speed boost, which is significant when you're going for speeds that are 300 plus on this particular dungeon, 250 plus, whatever you might be going for. We have a Neldor who's built out to essentially just go ahead and use his A1s against the boss. We have, of course, a Lady Mikage and an Aetheric the Fat. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you the team composition here as well. So Zinogre is doing basically whatever she wants until wave 2, in which case she opens with her Blade Strike, and then she's going to go ahead and use her Blade Strike as a priority 1 on the third wave. She is essentially going to be the second fastest, or maybe third fastest champion right after Farrakhan, and she is... okay, that was a bit weird. So she's going to go ahead and help everybody's turn meters get boosted a little bit with that increased speed. And then she's also going to go ahead and boost her own turn meter as well, which is quite awesome. Farrakhan is doing whatever he wants, except he opens with the A3 on the round 2, and then he doesn't use it, and then he uses it as a first priority on the third wave. If you're using Farrakhan the Fat inside Fire Knight Hard, definitely make sure you go ahead and turn off his A2, because you don't want the debuff bar getting filled, especially if you're using the strategy where the Fire Knight does not take a turn, because if that debuff bar gets filled, you're essentially going to block yourself from placing freezes, in which case your crowd control is going to fail. Lady Mikage is a bit interesting. So essentially for round 2 and round 1, what she does, so round 1 she's going to go ahead and metamorph first, and then she's going to have metamorph turned off, and then she's going to place a priority on Skittering Death. A2, or round 2 rather, she's going to have metamorph turned off, and then she's just going to go ahead and have that priority. And in round 3, very importantly, she's going to have her Metamorph be her opener. And then she's going to have Metamorph turned off, and she's going to have a priority of Imperial Decree. And then she's going to have her Silken Snare disabled. What this is going to do is essentially she's going to, for round 1 and 2, she's going to have significant crowd control coming out with her stuns. And then she's going to go ahead and switch over and ally attack with that extra turn once we get to the boss. So that's very important. Neldor does whatever he wants. Round 2, we go ahead and we open with the Chromatic Cross, which has a decreased speed, and then we don't use it. Round 3, we actually open with the Chromatic Cross, and then we don't use it. Dancing Razor's turned off, so essentially he's just opening 1 turn with his Chromatic, and then he's just doing A1s. Newt is default, opening, not using, and then he's going to go ahead and just do whatever he wants, essentially, on the third round, but he is going to open with the A1 just to get us some more of that crowd control. Now, I use this to farm stage 6, but you could very easily modify this team, especially if you had more speed and more stats on these champions, and you could go ahead and use this against Fire Knight Hard 10. My Neldor does not have his tier 6 mastery that increases his chances of placing the freeze, and of course my Newt does not fully booked on the A1, so sometimes if we miss those freezes, it does unfortunately result in our death on Hard 10. And my Newt isn't fully built yet. I manually built him. I haven't optimized him for damage or anything like that. And he actually has no masteries either. So it significantly slows down both our speeds as well as our consistency on Fire Knight 10. It is 100% team on Fire Knight 6 though. So if you're okay farming halfway up the Fire Knight hard tree, you can essentially use this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hop back here once we get to the Fire Knight, and you can kind of see how useful Zinogre is. And we are on to round 3 here, so you can see how this particular team works against the Fire Knight. Of course, we are 97 turns deep, and we are about 3.5 minutes, almost 4 minutes deep by the time we get here. No one ever accused this team of being particularly fast, but you know what? Some of the hardest content in the game being farmed with a free-to-play friendly team inside a decent speed threshold at 100% win rate is perfectly acceptable with me. If I ever need to do some hardcore farming in Fire Knight, I just leave it run overnight. Anyways, I'm not sitting here generally and watching these runs complete. You can already see how useful it is, though, to have Zinogre coming in with those multiple hits. Of course, when her decrease attack lands on the boss as well, that's going to help us to survive a hit if things ever go south and we get a lot of resistance on the freezes, or if the freezes don't proc from Neldor's A1, of course. We also have Newt coming in for a little bit of damage on his A3, of course, and then the weaken from Zinogre combined with the decreased defense from Farrakhan's A1 is incredible. Having both of those on the boss does help to make these runs so much quicker, and you can see how much more damage somebody like a Newt would be doing as well, even if he had something as simple as masteries or awakenings and those sorts of things. In terms of blessings on Zinogre, you essentially always want to run her with a Phantom Touch, even if she is 5 to 6 star awakened, in my opinion. The reason for that being the most use you're going to get out of this champion is going to be against single targets, so Faction Wars bosses, as well as Fire Knight Hard, as well as Dragon, and targets like that, essentially. So you're not really going to benefit from stuff that's going to decrease their defense. So for example, even like a Crushing Rend, you're not really going to benefit from Cruelty, any of that sort of stuff. Just go ahead, throw her in is it Dark Resolve? I always forget the name of this. Phantom Touch. There we go. I think that's it. Go ahead and throw her into that, essentially, and enjoy your extra damage that pops. Now, as you can see, this is going to be surprising. So Newt, of course, is going to be known for his A3 and having huge amounts of damage popping on the target. However, if we take a look, Zinogre Blademaster unbooked has more damage than the rest of this team, and she actually she has more damage than Neldor and Newt combined, and she is a single target damage dealer. Now, I imagine we'd see it even out a little bit if Newt had his masteries and if he was fully booked to rotate back around to those turns quicker on the boss, of course, but the damage output from this champion is incredible. I hope this showcase was enough to help you understand how good this champion is and to help convince you to actually start running her on your account. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and of course, I'll see you in the next video.